to the Marketing Drip, where we drip tips to scale your business digitally. Abby here, and the topic today is about understanding your financials for your business and your personal life. I talked with Ian McGinnis. He's the owner and financial advisor at The Wealth Practice. Ian is a fee-only, non-commissioned fiduciary financial planner that is regionally based but works nationally to help dentists and physicians grow their wealth in an unbiased manner. He started his own firm, The Wealth Practice, and really quickly found that the success in helping dentists and physicians plan their own financial future and grow his business to manage over $100 million. You guys are going to be able to tell in this episode that he's passionate about helping others reach their financial goals and really takes pride in being able to serve as a trusted advisor. So let's begin today's drip, provided by Digital Resource, a full-service digital marketing agency that is your resource for everything digital. Well, hey, Ian, thank you so much for joining and dripping on some knowledge on us today. So excited to have you and have your expertise. So thank you for joining. Yay! Yeah. Well, let's just dive right into this, Ian. We've talked a lot about finding the right financial advisors, right? That can be very daunting for some people. They don't know who's the right one for them or how to find the right one that's going to be a good fit. And really, it comes out of trust as well, right? Making sure that we're talking money here. This can be a scary topic that shouldn't be so scary. So if you could break down the difference of types of advisors, of financial advisors, to help guide people through this process.
Yeah. So financial advisor is like a really broad term, obviously. And so there's different levels of fiduciary responsibility within that. And there's also different ways that they get paid. And so if we kind of break down that, you should be able to at least narrow down the advisors that you're interviewing or the planners that you're interviewing to kind of then see like, hey, is this person right for me? And so there's three different kind of tiers. There's commission advisor, fee-based advisor, and fee-only advisor. And I'll start with the commission because it's really simple. And so commission is tied to a broker-dealer. It's very simple, like thought process there. It's just, hey, you do a transactional deal with them, they get paid, they sell you insurance, they sell you an investment product, they sell you an annuity, and that's how they receive their income. And so that's with a broker dealer, kind of your typical big block places that you might know of. The next, which has a little bit more fiduciary responsibility, is going to be fee based, and so they can kind of put on that fiduciary hat and get charged for their time or financial plan, but then they can also take it off and then do the same thing commission advisor says and say, hey, Abby, this annuity product or this insurance product or this investment product is the best thing for you, and it may not always be the best. Then fee only is the highest level of fiduciary standard, which basically means, and I know the term fiduciary is probably another thing that we probably should define here, right? So let me back up a little bit. Fiduciary means that they have a legal obligation to act in their client's best financial interest. And so a fee-only advisor or a financial planner is obligated to do what's legally the best thing for the client outright. And so they only get paid by their clients. They can't get paid by a broker dealer. They can't get paid by, a CPA, like giving them a referral bonus, or an insurance agent giving them commissions, or a real estate agent, whatever it may be. They can only receive compensation from their clients. Usually how that's going to be paid is it's either going to be a transactional, hey, can you make me a financial plan? It'll be a retainer. Hey, I'm going to become your client. This is how much it costs, an annual membership or whatever it may be. Or, hey, there's an asset management fee. And typically it's, two of those three or all of the three. And so those are really important things to know, because obviously there's a lot of good people that are out there, but how you get paid is going to determine your conflicts of interest and also your incentives of how you're going to help someone. So going a little bit personal here, but I'll just kind of, a big reason why I ended up in the space that I'm in. So actually, I went through every single company model that there was. So
been there, done that.
Yeah, literally been there, done that, and slowly went from commission to fee-based to fee only. And when I started in this industry, my parents, I told them, hey, I started at XYZ firm, and I'm getting off and going, and I'm a financial advisor, mom and dad, give me a high five, somebody, right? And they didn't take it that way. So they're actually kind of like, hey, why don't you want to do something else? Like, you're so gifted, go into another field. And it's kind of like, wait, this is a, pretty viable,
prestigious field. Yeah, absolutely.
Profession. And so I started asking more questions to them, and it turned out they had actually dealt with a financial advisor back in the early 2000s. And my parents are very like blue collar family, worked hard for their money and saved as much as they could, but like that still was, very negligible to, the higher 1%ers of the world. But anyway, so they finally earned some money, they put it all in their savings, and they finally got the courage to put it in the stock market. They met with a financial advisor, they put their money in the stock market, and the stock market, as you know, like the early 2000s, it tanked, right? And so they lost about 37 to 40% of their market account.
Oh my gosh.
And so they call up their advisor. This is, I was not in this, profession at that time. I had no idea. They call up their advisor and they're freaking out, and they say, hey, we want to take our money out of the market, right? And so their advisor just says, okay, cool, see you later, right? Well, was that the best thing for them? No, because when your stocks go down, you don't realize the loss until you take the money out, actually. Mm-hmm. And so if they would have kept the money in, it would have rebounded that next year, and everything would have been perfectly fine. So that decision that they made several years back, it's still affecting the retirement plan today, unfortunately. And so that's been a very detrimental situation. But with that, the advisor had no incentive to coach them and educate them on the pros and cons of either putting the money in, taking it out, or whatever may, be an alternative solution to that. Because they were a commission advisor and they had already gotten paid when my mom and dad put their money in the market. So typically,
but the name is advisor. You are advising.
It's really weird. This isn't everyone. It's just kind of a thing that's been picked up. So legally, a financial advisor with an ER is fee-based or higher, and a financial advisor with an OR is commission-based. And it's the weirdest, like, little asterisk moment where clearly some attorney figured this out, which I have attorney friends and they're great, but it's kind of one of those, like, what, like, how is this even legal? But so, they ended up in a bad situation though. And they were being charged like an asset management fee. So a commission advisor can charge an asset management fee, but they can charge a sales load fee essentially as well. And so they got charged an extra percentage. And so it was kind of unfortunate. Thankfully they are doing fine now, but that's where I started in the industry. And then I left them, got recruited to a fee-based group who said, hey, we do planning. This is, what we do. And I was like, great, this is awesome. But quickly when I got in there, I realized the stress coming from upper management of saying like, hey, you need to sell products. And I was like, well, I have all these clients I'm doing financial plans for, and I'm implementing them products outside of our company because it doesn't make sense for them to do it with us. And when I said that to them most quickly, like, hey, I think it's time for us to separate this engagement, right? And so anyways, you just understanding how your advisor gets paid and how the firm gets paid.
You're hitting on some. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. Because it rings true, right? That scary. You don't know, you don't know, and it's hard to that trust in general, but trust with money. It's a hard topic to talk about. Especially with business owners. When you are a business owner, you have to financially be solvent. You have to be having this big conversation. And it's very vulnerable to talk about that. And then you have to trust somebody that knows what they're doing and hopefully be advising you in the right way. So, if you could go back and tell your parents, like, or anybody in general
Yeah.
that's watching, like, what are the type of questions they should be asking either their current advisor, or if they're interviewing other people, to potentially looking for a financial advisor to be their next partner in a sense, what questions would you tell them to ask to
Yeah.
make sure that they're making
Great.
that right decision?
Great question. So the first I'd ask, are you attached to a broker dealer? And so that's an industry term that basically means, hey, we create products and we sell products. And so if they're attached to a broker dealer, they can receive a commission. That's probably an easy reason to not work with them. The second question, which is really kind of going back to the first as well, is, are you a fiduciary? Unfortunately, a lot of these advisors or sales reps are trained to kind of navigate that conversation and basically like not really answer it, almost like a politician. So asking that question, are you a fiduciary? And then having it followed up with, can you send me your ADV? And that's essentially a document that they file with FINRA or the SEC. And FINRA, for you listeners, is a regulating body for the state side of investment companies, and then the SEC is a national body for investment companies. And so, so that's they can ask for that form. And then another easy question is, hey, can you sell me insurance? And that's a good one to ask. I think that's probably my favorite question to ask, is because quickly someone who is a commission or fee-based advisor will say, yeah, of course I can sell you insurance. And that's a quickly, hey, we're probably not right for each other, right? And so you're kind of setting them up for failure in a sense with those questions. But if they answer yes to any of those questions outside of the fiduciary one, then it's probably should look somewhere else. And to give listeners an idea too, there's probably about, I think the last study that I read, there was about 450,000 financial advisors or reps or planners that were out there. And so a pretty large group of people. And,
oh my gosh.
And of that, I think there was only 5,500 were fee only. So it's,
oh my gosh,
a very small subset that you're looking for. And there's things like NAFTA, which is like the National Advisor Fee Only Network or whatever it is, that you can find a fee only advisor on there as well. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's insurance. That's real. That's tricky because they're like, yes, and you're like, haha. No.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So.
And it is. Yeah. You want to make sure they have their own, like their agenda is your agenda, essentially.
Exactly.
And that's with any partnership. You want to make sure you understand each other, that it is within your best interest, the level of trust. I think just working with people that you want to enjoy working with and that you can have those conversations. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, 5,000, that's crazy.
It really is. And I wish the industry would switch it. That's outside my pay grade. But personally, I feel like everyone should be under that same standard. But then these big firms don't make as much. So.
Because there are the big firms, right? And they do have, maybe it is more convenience. Maybe they're just more accessible in that nature. I mean, how do people really determine if that person or that firm is best for them? Is it, it could be different situations or.
Yeah. So it's all going to be based on different situations. So obviously, times have changed a little bit. And so being geographically local to someone, that has changed. A lot of people are okay with doing Zoom. I have clients in different states who I've never met before. And we have a great, interpersonal relationship. But some clients, they want someone that they can drop it on their office and kind of say, hey, let's grab a, coffee or whatever it may be. So that'd be the first thing I'd have people just kind of think about, like, hey, do you want someone in person or do you want someone that's just good advice, right? And the thought process that I would say to that is if my kid had a heart defect and I had to go find a surgeon, I probably wouldn't just look locally. I'd probably look for the best surgeon in the world, right?
Oh.
So I would say, hey, there's probably great advice locally that you can find, and there's probably a fee only advisor that you can find locally, but look for the best fit for you. And then that also goes to the relationship factor, right? So me, I'm a little bit more casual. I'm, going to ask people about, hey, what are you doing this weekend? So if someone doesn't want like an actual, personal relationship, they're probably not a good fit for me.
Right.
And there's other advisors that are going to be a better fit, right? And so I think also understanding like what type of relationship do you want with your financial advisor? If you're, out at a ball game and you don't want your financial planner to walk up to you and say hello, well, you probably should pick someone that's kind of more of the, hey, we're going to have a separation between personal and business. And of course, there's always going to be that separation, but those are some things to think about. And then also something that a lot of people don't think about is, hey, I'm in my 50s and 60s and I have a financial planner who's my age. Well, what happens when that financial planner retires? Do they have a succession plan? Do they have a young financial planner to take over and manage your money? And if they don't, then maybe it's time to start interviewing younger financial planners, or at least a firm that is going to be around while you're in retirement and you're in your 80s and 90s possibly, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you call the office and nobody's there, right?
Oh, it's so true. Yeah, and also just being relevant and like making sure it's with the times and with, it's always depends on location. Like you said, is a great determination. But is that override now that we're in the digital age? Does that even matter anymore? Because we can have that personal. I mean, look, you're in Mississippi, I'm in Nashville. Like we still have a great relationship. I feel like I see you all the time or talk to you all the time, but I've only met you once in person, so it's a matter of everybody can talk now and have these connections and these relationships. So really identifying if they are the best for you. Do you enjoy their company? Do you trust them? And are they going to be the longevity? Are they going to be there when things change for you to rely on, and they don't just shift or retire themselves, or they're focused on their way out, their exit plan, right? And making sure you're covered.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I'd also add to that is, are they specific to you, right? And so, and I'll give a couple examples just like really briefly. So a physician or a dentist usually comes out with a lot of student loan debt, right? So sometimes, upwards of 300,000, 500,000. I've seen someone come to my office with almost, $700,000 in student loan debt. And so on the physician side, the same on the dental side, but on the physician side more because it's more accessible. Having a financial planner who understands the public service loan forgiveness plan is extremely important. Like that's literally sometimes $500,000
just a little
forgiveness, and that changes your
just a pinch.
The same just a little bit of an increase. When you're in your 30s and you have a debt for $500,000 forgiven, does that make you happy? Yes or no? And if it does, probably talk to somebody who understands it. The other thing is, on the dental side, there's so many aspects, even that are so different from the physician side, of starting a business and making steps to ownership of a business, and having your advisor understand, hey, I probably don't need to max out my IRA that first and second year out of dental school. And I probably don't need to aggressively pay down my student loan debt because I'm trying to own a practice in 3 years. And I'm going to need a certain amount of liquidity to be able to do that, right? And then the other aspect, is some of these corporate offices will offer, either RVUs, which is essentially commission for how many patients you can see, or company stock options. And so working with somebody who understands those as well is really important. And then there's all different niches and kind of areas, just like how physician might be cardiologist, they only work with the heart, right? Or a dentist who's in ortho. There's specialties within financial planners where they understand a certain space. And so it's really important to kind of understand that space. And so for me and my partner, I'm on the medical and dental side, so I work with physicians and dentists. And my partner, he works with closely held business owners. So businesses that are typically between 2 million to 100 million. That's kind of the space. I know it's a broad space, but that's usually the groups that have a lower amount of employees. So, but anyways.
Because that's how you're going to achieve your goals, if you know your trajectory of what you want to achieve, right? And then you have somebody that understands how to get you there versus figuring it out. Yeah, like you said, it's that specialty, it's that specialist. If you are in that field, you know how to leverage their income to really drive it. Or to your point, yeah, if you did just graduate and what's holding you back from buying your own practice is because you don't feel like you have enough money because you're in debt. Well, the way to get out of debt is by having your name on land, by having your name associated with the building and actually having those property values to pay that back. I mean, that's a huge opportunity, but if you don't have somebody advising you in the right direction, that can be scary. And then you fall into, being a part of another practice that isn't yours, and that's okay too. It just depends on what's best for you. And same goes with marketing, right? Like it's always like, it comes down to trust, but it's also make sure they understand your goals and not their goals. They're not just giving you a cookie cutter plan and saying like, oh, this is what we do for startup. No, like, what are your goals? Do you want more for dentists? Like, do you want more implants, or do you want more for contractors? Do you want more jobs? Like what's the end goal here? Or you want to increase it? And you've got to know that plan, and that's what the board of advisors is around you for, so make sure you can get there based on their own specialty and experience. And that's exactly what it is with financials, especially, is finding those loopholes and those tricks that you guys know so well to leverage it even faster. And it is a safer route. Like, I think that's what's kind of I don't know, I could be wrong. I feel like that's the stigma, is like, oh, it's scary to have a financial advisor. It's scary but it's like, no, it's a safe route. Actually, you have somebody that knows what they're doing, watching your money, versus you figuring it out and like reading some blogs and thinking like, oh, I know the stock market now. Like, no, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the same thought process of like, why do you join any association for your business? It's, well, you want to talk to someone who's ahead of you and figure out what they're doing that you could do trying your own market in your own business. And so it's like, hey, we have a bunch of business owners, physicians, and dentists, and it's not like, hey, we're just figuring this stuff out. We have a tried and proven process to help generate our clients' net worth. And, other advisors do too, for their particular niches. And it's just important to work with someone who understands, hey, I can help you generate wealth and do it hopefully in a long-term passive way, right? Yeah. Because also another thing is, you don't want to waste a bunch of time doing it yourself. And so, like, for me, this sounds really stupid and corny. I know I'm going off topic here, but the fact of the matter is, like, so we have 3 kids now: a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And
cutest family. Oh my gosh.
But as you can imagine, they need lots of time, right? And there's diapers flying everywhere at all times. So I used to, when we only had 2 kids, I used to cut the grass myself and like do all the edging and stuff, and I loved it. I was one of those like Southern nerds who's just like, I want my grass to be perfect.
You were dad now.
Yeah. And when we had our third, my wife looked at me and was like, this takes like 2 hours out of our weekend, almost every weekend. And she was like, I can't do it, Ian. And so basically, like, I had to outsource that because it was taking time away from my family. And then when it came down to it too, I was like, oh, well, maybe I could do this during the week when I'm supposed to be working. And then I quantified my 2 hours of working. I was like, well, that's a terrible idea. I'd be paying myself pennies on the dollar. At that point. Yeah, so I can outsource to pay to somebody else. So anyways, the long story short, time is valuable as well. And so quantify your time.
Exactly. And that kind of goes on that same topic of what we've been alluding to, is that team of oh my gosh, team of advisors. Try to say that 5 times fast. That was tricky.
Yeah,
Your team
McKenna,
of advisors.
make sure that ends up in the actual long-term
Actually, see, guys, I'm normal. Okay, I fumble.
Yeah.
a lot, actually.
How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Say it with me.
How now, brown cow?
Yeah.
But when it comes to your team of advisors, oh my gosh, it's really knowing, having that team of experts, like in that case, knowing somebody that can do your lawn care, right? So you can focus on, or, if it's a nanny or what have you. But then there's also, same with the business. You need to know how, don't just, and I loved your example earlier about specialists, right? Like, don't just pick anybody. Make sure you have your board of advisors, whether it comes to financials, it comes to marketing, it comes to transitioning, it comes to your, like, having a lawyer or a CPA, like all of that. You need your team of advisors to make sure you're set for success. So I know you talk to a lot of students that are getting ready to graduate. So when do you think they should start forming that, and how should it function properly to really make sure they're set for success from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, several years back, I used to, talk to students and help them with everything. And it used to be a situation where it was like, hey, let me introduce you to team members later on in your career. And then I realized I was actually really disjointed, and it was wasting a lot of time for everyone, and it was costing the client more because mistakes were being made along the way, whether they were working with me or not. And so, and I also at that point was saying, hey, look, all you need to do is just go work with the, insurance agent, get these boxes checked off, and come talk to me like 3 years from now. Well, what I found is from that group of people is a lot of them were coming back to me with, whole life insurance. So it was like added on. They had the wrong disability insurance. They didn't form their LLC properly. They hadn't been doing their taxes correctly. They had invested in some fund that, their buddy told them to invest in. They lost a bunch of money. So all these mistakes were being made. And so I kind of changed my perspective on that. And now a lot of our clients, they actually do start coming on and onboarding with us in that last semester of school. And then when they finish up their training. And the reason being is because we kind of almost function as like a primary care physician. We know a lot about everything, but we're not the experts in it. And so we understand, hey, you're forming your PLLC, and for your specific state, it needs to get probably taxed this way. Let's go talk to a CPA and confirm it with them, because every state has different tax rules. And so them having an educated CPA that understands their specific state is really important. And that CPA doesn't have to necessarily be in that state. They just have to understand it. And then also, which I'm sure they hear this all the time, having a good dental CPA, like
Shout
a
out.
Brad Paramore with a TPP CPA.
David.
They're out of Birmingham. Yeah, shout out to Brad. I'm in Mississippi. Yeah, I'm in Mississippi, and I bring him in to meet so many clients because he just does a great job. And they do it for, quite honestly, a really affordable price as well. And so, but having a CPA to understand, hey, here's how you're going to get paid. Even as an associate, hey, does it make more sense to be W-2 or 1099? Does it make more sense to have that money come straight to your personal name, or to go through a PLLC? And then should it be taxed as an S Corp? Those types of things. Is it, what should your salary be if you're paying yourself from your own PLLC? What's the IRS limits? Those types of things, right? Those are really important. Then also the other side of that is, well, before sometimes even Brad comes into the picture, hey, is this contract even worthwhile?
Yeah.
Should I be even entertaining this contract from this, senior dentist who's looking at hiring me? Are they, I've seen contracts that have been all over the place, and I'm just a financial planner, so I only get to see a couple a year. A contract attorney gets to see, maybe I'm exaggerating here, but I imagine at least, dozens to, maybe 50 or so. I'm not really sure, but there's a lot of contract attorneys that specialize in that dental space. And if they don't, it's still good to have some expertise in understanding, hey, there's a non-compete for a 5-mile radius. Well, if you're planning on setting up your own dental practice there in a couple of years, that's going to make it where you have to leave town. Like, you can't go work there and then set up a dental practice down the street, even if you're 4 miles away, because of that 5-mile radius. There's a lot of things that are in there. There's actually, this was on the physician side. Thankfully, so I say thankfully, I wish I had met them sooner. There's a physician that I do know of that they ended up signing a contract with a big hospital group that had several clinics that were outside the hospital scattered throughout the city. They moved up there to go work in a clinic. They signed a non-compete for a clinic. They were planning on setting up their own clinic, 5 years after. Well, turned out in their non-compete, it wasn't just specific to that clinic. It was specific to the hospital and the whole group.
Oh my gosh.
And so they literally had to move states. Thankfully for them, they didn't end up liking the state. But when I looked over the contract, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is terrible. So it's those types of things that you need to be aware of. There's a lot of dental groups too that are being bought up by hedge fund companies, which, that's a whole nother debate as whether it's good or bad. But if you're onboarding as an associate, well, what happens if their buy-in is 3 years from now, but they sell in 2 years? What happens, like, all that sweat equity that you built in, technically, legally on your contract, you get paid nothing. So there needs to be a clause in there that says, hey, if we're 2 years into this agreement and then you guys end up selling earlier than planned, I want some stake in that. And here's how much it needs to be, right? And understanding the negotiations and working with the contract attorney and seeing, hey, what should I push for? What should I not push for? What's worthwhile? What's not? Is really important. And then, so those would be the two professionals that I'd, add in as you're working with a financial planner. Add in a contract attorney. Add in a, dental CPA. That you can trust, and they all need to be working really closely together, right? So, like, the financial planner should be talking to the CPA on an annual basis in the least, and that CPA should be looking forward in regards to tax strategies, because there's a lot of different things that your planner and your CPA can put together to say, hey, we need to be A, B, and C, and this is the best tax strategy. But what if that doesn't line up with their goals, right? So this last week, I sat down with the CPA with a young associate. He has a PLLC S corp, and the CPA was saying, hey, let's set up a solo 401k for him, and let's max out his 401k and put as much money as in there possible so we can deduct from this year's taxes. Well, that's great on the surface, right? Because we're able to deduct a lot from taxes. But the issue is that associate wants to own a dental practice in 3 years outright. And so them contributing that $20,500 plus, roughly another $25,000 from their employer match from themselves, that is $45,000 that could have gone to a liquid account to help them be able to purchase a dental practice. And I'm sure we can talk about this later on, but understanding the lending requirements and talking with a dental specific or whatever business you're in specific planner and CPA, and also a lender possibly. So for a dental practice, if you're coming out, you're going to need roughly 10% in liquidity. There's certain situations where it could go down as low as 5%, but that's really rare. So usually you need about 10% in liquidity. You're probably not going to have to put that up for the actual practice, but then you're also going to have to be able to produce 80% of production. And so in theory, if you're looking at a practice that's doing $1 million in production, your personal production needs to be 800,000. And then your liquidity that you have on hand needs to be 100,000, right? And so you put those key metrics in there. So for a lot of our clients, I have them send me their monthly production reports. And so then I can kind of reach out to lenders and ask them, hey, I have Abby. she's doing great. Here's her production and her liquidity is this. How soon could we get lending for her? What does that look like? And then the lenders, Provide does a great job. They're one of the few, there's a couple other lenders out there, but they're one of the few that will say, hey, we'll lend to a dentist in the first 12 months. That, it just provides a quicker way to grow their net worth. And so if you're working with a team that understands the goals of that one person, then it's super helpful.
And that's I love the aspect too of don't only have a team, but have them collaborate and work together. Whether they know each other or not, connecting them so you're not the middleman and you're trying to discuss it or trying to like get it from one person to the other. They're really more engaged. I mean, you're talking about your business, you're talking about your money here. And in order for it to be the best practical the way of being profitable, then go ahead and make sure that they're connected, they're collaborating, they're talking through that. Like that situation alone is crazy that it wouldn't have been covered. Like if it was just your CPA, they would have went for it and with their intention, right? But then if it's a collaboration, there's like, or this, or it's a brainstorm. It's a collaboration that way. Oh, but I know their goals are, we're trying to get them here. If you would have made that move, that would have messed me up.
Exactly.
But if we're all working together to make, that is the whole point of having your board of trustees in a sense, right? Like you have there might not be actually internal, but they are your team of advisors to make sure that you're set for success and that you're being guided, but it's not on an individual track. It's on a team track.
It really
that
is.
Understand your company, your industry, your state, like all of those seem like big influences to really make you set for success.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Like 2 weeks ago, or it might have been 3 weeks ago, I was working with an older client who they've done really well for themselves and they give a lot on an annual basis to charities. And so it came down to a situation where they were telling me, hey, we're selling this piece of property. And we may be taking some money out from a business to do this whole deal as well. How can we do this the most tax efficient way? And so in my mind, I was thinking, hey, there's this strategy right here, but we can't implement it until the property is sold, right? From the proceeds of the property, and we can put money in there. And so what I did is I'm humble enough to understand, like, hey, I know some strategies. I know actually a lot compared to a lot of people, but I don't know every single strategy. And so that's when I actually reached out to Brad Paramore. I said, hey, Brad, here's what's going on. Here's some moving pieces. What are your thoughts? And he said, well, actually, you can set that up and you can actually gift a certain percentage of the property to this strategy beforehand. And so what we ended up doing is kind of working through that to make it where then the client is in a situation where they're even saving more on taxes. Now, a lot of people won't do that because there's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. But again, it goes to how is your financial planner being paid?
Right.
Are they getting paid on an annual retainer basis, or are they getting paid for a transaction? And so if they're getting paid for a transaction, they're not getting paid for strategies like that at all. And so there's no incentive for them to even bring those ideas up. And so the way a fee-only advisor gets paid is, hey, it's just solely how do I grow your net worth? And
why go the extra,
go
out of my way to do something when I've met my paycheck, like, oh no, it's more of an incentive to make sure you're successful and that, and they bring in other angles. Like that's the best part. And I'm going to trickle back a little bit because we touched on it. We talked about dental students specifically. So if we want to dive into, you did speak to them before. We've talked a little bit about properties, but I want to make sure we hit this home. Like, what do you think for dental students? What advice would you give them to make sure that they are generating wealth?
Yeah, so there's a long list of things, so I'll try to keep it really short because I know we have only such amount of time. So the biggest thing that I would say for a dental student, first off, know the questions that you should be asking ahead of time before you go and I guess go through your training, your clinicals in your last year, right? Like you should be actively asking engaging questions to the current business owner as to, hey, are they looking to sell? Is this a good practice?
Love it.
There's a software out there called Dental Intel. Abby, I know you use them all the time. You can work with someone who's specific to dental and say, hey, can I get a snapshot on this practice? And you can actually pull their numbers and say, hey, is this a viable practice, right? That's kind of step one, what I would say. Step two is, well, hey, you need to do kind of the basics of financial planning, and that's start planning, live within a budget, get your basic insurances, your basic trusts and wills. In doing so, then you're kind of mitigating your loss, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do to grow your net worth. There's also some things that you can do from preventing kind of just decimating your net worth. And those are kind of some of those things. In doing so, depending on what your goals are, being aware of, hey, if I want to own a practice, I need to start saving to have ownership in a practice. And so it's not super common to be talked about from my perspective, because most financial planners get paid by the assets they manage, and that's the only way they get paid. So they're going to say, hey, conflict of interest arises, give me all your money and I'll manage it for you, right? Well, the truth is, it doesn't always make sense in the first couple of years of a dental student finishing up school to just go investing their money. Sometimes it makes more sense for them to say, hey, let me just keep this in cash or keep this in a money market account and stack money so that I can go then buy a practice, right? Because if you're looking at everything from the lens of return on the investment, well, short term, yeah, you're missing out on the investment for your dollars now. But when you factor in the long-term opportunity cost, because of those dollars are in retirement funds, you can't access those until you're 59 and a half. You know, and if you do, you just incur all these huge penalties if you take them out early. So having that money in a liquid account is extremely vital at that point. You know, and just being aware. Gosh, and I actually thought about this before we talked, and so I wanted to mention two other things. Once you get to the point where when you've kind of done all the basics, then you do want to start investing early. Typically, most associates coming out, their taxable income isn't very high. And so, of course, you know, consult with your CPA, consult with your financial planner when you're going through this process. But does it make sense to pay the taxes on your retirement accounts now versus paying it later? Because your income's probably the lowest it's ever going to be right now, right? Especially in that first year when they come out and they start working in, you know, July or August. Well, you only have a couple months to work before the tax year ends. And so does it make sense to put that $6,000 in if you're just planning to be an associate for a long-term period? Those types of things. And then the other thing is pay off your student loans. Realize your student loans are an investment, though. And so if that interest is significantly low, there's opportunity costs in letting those student loans just kind of sit there. If it's at 2-3%, maybe just let those sit there and kind of just pay down on them the standard way over the 10 years, and then use that money to go buy a business instead. The other factor to be looking at in that is as you're growing your net worth, the best way to do that is to live simply for the first couple of years.
It's hard. You want to celebrate, right? So, you know, you're done with all this. Now I gotta get my car, my house,
it is
the weddings, you know, all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for my clients, we go out and we have like a really nice blowout, nice dinner when our clients reach like a net worth of 0, right? Which sounds crazy. But those that are out there that are taking, you know, $100,000 plus in student loans, they can understand it. But anyways, if you just delay your lifestyle just 1 or 2 years, you can save a lot of money. You know, I have an associate I'm working with right now, and he is extremely driven, but this is probably too much to ask from most. He's living with his parents for this next year.
Wow.
And he's literally saving probably 80% of his income because he wants to own practice in the next 12 months. And so in doing so, he's going to be leaps and bounds ahead of his other peers because of that. And so let your lifestyle slowly creep
that's so
behind
smart.
you
One
by
to
a
two
couple
years
years
can make
if
a huge
possible
difference.
as well.
It's hard, like, because you've been putting all that work in, and now it's like time. But what's 2 more years then? You know, if you've already done it, they should teach that in school, like just 2 more years. That's smart. Well, and if we're not talking just about dental students, right? We're talking about like any businesses like that typically neglect financial opportunities. What are missed financial opportunities that you find businesses neglect to kind of steer from?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk in two different stages. So like the start out business and then the established business. And before that actually even starts, so we're actually going through a transition right now, helping a client purchase a business, and the seller was at a different number than what our client was looking at paying for it. And they're just totally off on like, hey, what's the business actually worth versus what the seller's willing to pay or sell for it. And so what ended up happening is just there's certain ways that you can even structure a transition that ends up helping the seller for their taxes, right? And so we ended up being able to offer probably about $500,000 or $600,000 less than what the seller wanted because of the way we structured the deal tax-wise. And now we had to, of course, consult with the CPA in doing so. But if you can navigate things, even in the transitional phase, right? So whether you're working with a broker or a CPA on the buy side, or even just a financial planner, extremely important. So that's kind of step one. And that business is actually not a dental practice. It's just, a business.
Right.
And so that's extremely important. And then also like just the structuring of the buy. The next thing is keeping liquidity. How many businesses do you see that they start off and then they fail within the first 24 months because they didn't plan accordingly? There's a subtle speed bump in the road. They had to take on way too much debt. They had to put a lien on their house. There's all these different things that, quite frankly, from my perspective, you see business owners take an abundance of risk, which they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs. I'm one as well. But there's smarter ways to take that risk, right? Like you don't want to put your marriage and your family at risk because you want to start a business. And so understanding exactly how much cash you need. And so a lot of times what we'll do is we'll help clients run projections for year one and year two in an actual pro forma and saying, okay, here's what you should do and here's how you should do it. And here's what you can expect to pay for marketing. And here's why it makes sense to pay for marketing. And, I know we've had this conversation. Here's why it makes sense to pay for marketing before you even start your business. So you're at the top of the line when you open your doors, right? Like there's things that are very important. Again, having that contract attorney set up your LLC, S Corp, or whatever it may be, in the proper formation so you don't end up getting sued. There's a particular area in those formation documents where you have to put an address and a phone number. Most business owners just put their cell phone and their home address. Well, if something goes wrong on a job, you don't want somebody showing up to your house and knocking on your door. You don't want somebody calling your cell phone, right? And so, and you also, so like that's from like a bad customer or patient perspective, but you also from like the legal side, you don't want to get served papers on your front doorstep and have all your neighbors watch you get some lawsuit, right? So like there's some serious things to consider there. That would kind of be stage one of like startup is like, hey, make sure you structure the buy in a favorable way so you can get a lower price if possible. There are certain states that are going to, navigate that differently. And then the second thing is make sure you form your entities correctly. And the third thing, which is the most important, is make sure you have a lot of liquidity, right? So make sure you have liquidity enough to make it last throughout the year. There's certain things you can do if you're working as a W-2 employee. Well, go get a personal line of credit before you decide to, put in your 2 weeks notice and jump ship. Having a personal line of credit at an 8%, 10% interest rate is a lot better than putting things on your credit card too at 25%. So that would be kind of the first couple of things I'd say, and then like kind of the marketing plan, and then having your team of advisors, of course. And a lot of business owners will quickly retort and say, well, hey, Ian, why should I hire A, B, and C person? They're going to cost so much. Well, if I'm looking at it from my side, I'm looking at everything through the lens of return on the investment. So if I'm paying a service or somebody $10,000, but it's going to give me $20,000, I'll make that deal every single time. It just makes sense. That's why business owners go into business.
Why are we doing this?
If not, to provide the service, right? Yeah. So what's the whole name of the game? Is to make money, right? And so that kind of be stage one. Stage two, which is kind of like, hey, we're a little bit established. Now we're starting to have tax issues, right? Because in the first stage, you're just trying to survive, right? We're just kind of like, hey, how do we get cash flow positive? In the second stage, it's like, okay, we have a lot of cash. How do we use it wisely and not get taxed so we can keep all our money, right? And so there's simple things, just understanding like, hey, the difference between a simple IRA, a SEP IRA, and a 401k. Why would you do one of those three, and why would you implement them for your company for those deductions? So that's kind of that first step, maxing out those retirement accounts. And a lot of business owners, again, will say, well, hey, Ian, I can use this and put this money somewhere else. Well, we're just doing that for the tax benefits, right? A lot of people are scared of the stock market. Well, you have to think about the stock market like there's a positive return and there's tax benefits to it. The second thought process is a lot of business owners fall into the idea that, hey, I need my commercial building for my business. Well, is your business in the best commercial building location, right? So if like you're a construction person, does it make sense for you to buy the warehouse if the warehouse is overpriced? Probably not, because you're going to be the one paying rent on it. Like, yeah, there are some tax incentives there, but does owning the warehouse really benefit you versus owning a commercial building where somebody else is paying you the money for it, right? And so the other aspect is, hey, if you're going to build, get someone who's specific to you. Business owners in general, but also like more specifically to, medical and dental practices. If you don't have a builder who understands how to plumb out a dental practice, like don't hire them. You're going to end up killing yourself. Like it's going to ruin your business before it gets started. But understanding that thought process. So let's say you go to build a business. Well, hey, what happens if you build a little bit bigger
and then potentially build out for new operatories or what have you down the road? Right?
Exactly. And then there's certain tax, not incentives, but tax strategies that are out there as well, where you can say, hey, instead of depreciating this commercial building over 39 years, let me depreciate certain aspects of the building really quickly. And so when you build it, you can start doing that. And then if you do any renovations, you can do that. And so there's certain aspects to that where it's a huge benefit. If you have a stay-at-home spouse, a lot of times, depending on what CPA you're working with, this is kind of going into the gray area. So I may have to retract this statement later on. But if you have a stay-at-home spouse, you might be able to get them to qualify as a real estate professional. And so then that same aspect, that strategy that I just talked about, well, you might be able to use that to leverage against your total income rather than just your rental income, right? And so that makes it extremely attractive. I guess probably after that, if you're looking at everything, then you can get into the other space where it's like, hey, how do we go further with our taxes? You could possibly separate your real estate business, so the building that you're in, put it in another LLC or another trust, and then have your business paying that. You're just kind of separating entities. There's other factors that you can go into. You can actually stack retirement plans, which a lot of people don't know about. But you
that
can
always
put something on top of a 401k. It's a lot of paperwork, so a lot of people won't touch it. It needs to be a particular situation. But there's, a client this last year, we ended up saving them $200,000 in taxes roughly because of that. And so there's a lot of different things that you can navigate and kind of turn on and off to help your clients. And let me actually retract that. I don't think I can use hard numbers for the tax savings.
But cut it. No.
Let me restate that.
Got it.
Yeah, cut it. So you can stack a 401k. You can put another retirement vehicle on top of a 401k. And the way that can be structured is essentially the business owner can put more money in and defer that income until later years. And typically it ends up saving significant amount of taxes just because we're taking those top line incomes off. And so depending on what state you're in, that could be, 42 to sometimes 51% if you're over in California. So
yeah. I know. And
there's more things that you can add on top of that.
That shows though. I mean, there's so many layers.
But I'll stop there.
I always say this, and I've probably said this almost every episode. We probably should start a count on the bottom. That's just ding, Abby says it again. But it's true when you're specifically talking about dental, because obviously we are in that dental space. So I always tell dentists, don't trust me to do an implant, I won't trust you to do a marketing campaign. It's just the same. It's you're specializing. That's your focus. That's what you're trying to do. And it goes back to the team of advisors that we saw earlier, and really making sure that you have a trusted team that you can rely on. But all of this knowledge, I mean, you can teach it, but it's constantly evolving, and you have to stay on top of what the trends are, what you can do, what you can't do. And there's so much opportunity. You just got to know what you're doing and trust the people that are doing it with you, to know that your goal in mind is going to keep you on track, and we're all here to support and succeed. That's all of our business models entirely.
Oh yeah, and that's, I mean, if you think about it too, that's only talking about their business. There's so many other strategies on the personal side, understanding how to max out your kids' college funds. Hey, should you put your personal house in a trust? What type of trust should it be in? Should it be a revocable or irrevocable trust? Is your estate plan set up? So all these different things that you can set up on your business side strategy-wise, trusting people like yourself and myself and, the groups like the Brad Paramore and all those different people to say, hey, we have a group that's specialized in this. So a lot of times, I'll even get real estate questions that come across my desk. I understand how to evaluate real estate, and we do that for all of our clients because that's a huge aspect of someone's financial planning process, right? But I also still reach out to the Doug Prices and the Car Realties of the world to say, hey, what are your thoughts on this, right? I also understand their incentives too, right? So they get paid on the transaction of real estate. And so oftentimes I'll do my own research, and then I'll ask somebody who's out of the area, or I'll ask someone who's in the area and say, hey, I have a dental practice. They're looking to go somewhere. Can you find them a spot? Right. And so it's just and I went a little bit off track there, but the thought process is there's so many things you can do on the business side, and there's so many things you can also do on the personal side to just increase your net worth long term, and then mitigate the risk that's associated with it. The reason why the 1%ers of the world stay the 1% is because they pay team members, right? They pay trusted advisors. There's a group that I sat down with one time, and I was trying to earn their business, and this is a $500 million net worth personnel. He's got 12 of me on his team, right? So and that's just of me. And so there's if you think about, hey, what's your return on the investment, and how do I get somebody who's highly skilled in this particular area?
It makes you
it makes sense.
It makes you more productive. It saves time. It allows you to stay focused. I remember when Amazon Prime just came out, and I had a colleague was saying how a lot of people are saying this is lazy, right? Oh, we're getting lazy. Now we have things delivered to us. We have to do so much less. And he's like, no, I don't. You're more productive because I just had 3 meetings and had a contract signed because of that. I didn't have to go down to Home Depot or, whatever, Walmart, and I didn't have to go pick something up and then bring it back because our printer was out of paper and we needed it to print the contract, right? Like we were able to be more efficient and productive. And that literally, I think of that analogy for so many things. And like you said, mowing the lawn, like it is true. If you can stay focused and if you realize that, well, the money of your time, which is the most valuable part of anything you're going to pay for, or your employees' time, if you're wasting that, you're not being as productive, you're losing money. So you need to make sure that people that are doing it they know what they're doing, and allocating that out. Don't try to be my brother always says, don't always try to be the hero, right? Like you try to make sure the way you can be the hero is by teaming up with the right people to make sure that you are set for success and everybody has their own focus and drive and you have the right team to support you in that ride. But it's
just exactly what you said, like quantifying your resources. And if time is your most valuable resource,
right?
Well, don't waste it. There's a dentist that I know who had a really hard time with delegating tasks to his team. And it was like, well, hey, where do you make the most money? It's while you're in the chair, right? And then you got to the stage then where it's like, okay, once you get out of the chair and you wear like that overall business hat, like let those other dentists do what they do to make you money, right? There's a reason why you delegate tasks within a business and say, okay, this person can understand this and they can run with this. And it's the same for everything else, and why you hire advisors. Could someone probably figure out what me and you do? Yeah.
And by the time you figure it out, then I'm already, years ahead of you anyway. And you're just going to constantly be playing catch up. What's the point?
Exactly.
It's just...
Yeah. You're playing the opportunity cost game, and then also like people are gifted in different ways. There's you're not going to put a quarterback on the football team on the offensive line. They're going to they might be a warm body to just kind of slow someone down a little bit, but they're probably unless they're 250 above, they're probably not the right fit.
I love it. Well, Ian, this has been amazing, and I'm like, my mind is blown. There's so much information that no, this is great.
Sorry we went
No. It's all about making sure that we are pointing people in the right direction. And at the end of the day, it comes down to talk to Ian, talk to his team, make sure that you are set for success. But thank you so much for talking to me today, Ian. It has been amazing. And thanks everybody else that has been tuning in. If you want to learn more about having a profitable business and have Ian and the Wealth Practice team take care of you, you can actually go to their website at mywealthpractice.com or give them a call at 601-760-8155. And you can also email them at info@mywealthpractice.com. We even included a Calendly link. If you want to talk to Ian directly, you can actually book time with them and talk to him about your goals and figure out how you can be profitable. So thank you again, Ian. Thanks, everyone. Of course. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Abby.